All right, happy Sunday, everyone. Mike from Hound Dog Media here, and it's time for another episode of Con to Couch. With so many conventions delayed or canceled this year, we're bringing the best guests and coolest hangouts of that experience right to you in the comfort of your own home. Today, we're bringing you the second installment of Flint Dille's limited series, celebrating the upcoming release of his new book, The Gamesmaster, almost famous in the Geek 80s. It's available for pre-order on Amazon and through other major booksellers, or you can go to Rarebird Publishing in the show links and pre-order your autographed copy today. Our guests today are TV writing legend Ron Friedman, animation writing superstar Doug Booth, and special guest co-host Buzz Dixon. And now, here are our hosts, Flint Dille and Jack Clemens.
Afternoon, guys. Hope everybody's having a good time, and thanks for joining us. You know me and Flint, but we've got some other great hosts, people in here. Buzz, can we start with you introducing yourself?
Well, I'm Buzz Dixon, and people tell me I've written their childhood.
Nice.
Doug?
Yeah, well, I started as an apprentice writer at Hanna-Barbera when a bunch of really old guys were still cranking away, including people like Tex Avery and the like. And I've been doing it ever since.
Ron?
Yeah.
Ron, tell them about some of the shows you worked on. I was absolutely amazed when I actually
Oh yeah, this is fun.
looked at the page. Yeah.
What, an animation or a
No,
live?
No, just walk through it.
It might be faster if he mentions the shows he didn't work on.
Yeah.
Yes. Unfortunately, I did the Dukes of Hazzard and I can't escape. Gilligan's Island, Fantasy Island, Starsky and Hutch, Charlie's Angels, Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie. I was cited by the Writers Guild for having written for 5 of their 101 best television series, All in the Family, The Andy Griffith Show, Barney Miller, Get Smart, and The Odd Couple. And in animation, I began writing in animation because I was declared to be too old to write for television containing human beings. I was told to my face by a producer I helped to make very wealthy. And I was having a meeting at Warner Brothers because I had three shows going there. And he's sitting on a bench, stoned out of his mind. And he said, "When are you going to hang it up?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, you're too old to write this. We're all betting that you have a little captive kid in a closet, and he's writing this shit." I told him to go fuck himself. But suddenly, I used to have meetings with vice presidents of all the networks. And if I couldn't get a gig here, I'd go to New York and come back with 3 assignments. So I knew something was happening. And then I had 2 pilots at NBC. One of them was ready to shoot. And the other one they had built the sets for. Thank God. Okay. Excuse that.
That was probably.
And I get a call.
That was
We're
probably.
in upstate New York for the marriage of a friend's daughter. And I get a call from NBC. And they said, "We have decided to go another way." I said, "What does that mean?" They said, "We're going to go another way." I said, "You mean another way without me?" They said, "Yes." I said, "Why?" They said, "Because we decided to go another way." I said, "You got the set built for 2 shows. You're supposed to start filming one, shooting one in 10 days. And I have a pay or play deal." They said, "We're prepared to do that." And they did that. And they got the hot young writers du jour who fucked up. They had to eat everything. But I decided I'd have to look elsewhere. So I looked into agriculture, not my call. Mortuary science, nah, I'd be dead in the business quickly. And then I was asked to write some animation for Hasbro because they did a talent search. They were looking for a real writer because animation writers were treated like shit.
Right.
And you were accused of being, you're writing for kiddies, you're writing for kids, you're writing shit. It's a comic book come to life. What's wrong with that? I think that's fabulous. I've always loved comic books and animation. Anyway, they had a talent search to find a real writer who could write for animation. So they had like 60, 70 people come in, and I got the gig. because they said, how are you going to do this? I said, well, you have more characters than there are in Bangladesh. I said, I will not write a 22-minute pilot because it'll be a parade. No kid is going to be able to make a connection. I want a 5-part miniseries, so there'll be enough face time for the kids to establish a connection. They said, that makes sense, so I did it. This was after I was declared dead in the business. And it was a tremendous success. Hasbro liked me enough to have me rewrite the first 50, 60 episodes of the Transformers to help the characters have more character. And it worked. And after that, I wrote The Transformers, the movie. And since that and in between, I created G.I. Joe, but I've done a lot of animation. I did a 2-hour movie called Two Daddies to Love Me for PBS. And I co-produced and created the Marvel Action Hour with Stan. And I love animation. I've always loved it. And finally, because I was with Stan Lee as a good friend for years before Spider-Man was made with Tobey Maguire. The Spider-Man, where the first episode was Stan's Spider-Man, where he was actually a kid whose problem was he had no money, he couldn't get laid, his aunt was in serious trouble, and his uncle was killed. And then, lucky him, he gets bitten by a radioactive spider, and now he has these immense powers to him. The movie was a smash. So suddenly, any comic book, Marvel particular, was where you went. It was then immediately not only okay, but it was preferred. But by that time, I was considered too old in the business to write a real movie. But I wrote other movies for television. I still managed to do that. Anyway, I got into animation, thankfully, by default, because I had crossed that imaginary date line in the sands of time that said you're either dead or your date stamp is done. So I love animation more than ever. And when I actually met some of the people with whom I had worked but never worked with, I was thrilled. They were real writers. They were intelligent people. They were not kiddie shit writers. It was thrilling. And I had the great joy of going to my first Comic-Con for Transformers. And I had written the book, I Killed Optimus Prime, So Sue Me, which was all about writing the Transformers. And for years, I would be approached by people who would recognize me because I was standing with Stan Lee. And they would come to me with tears in their eyes. 3 generations, grandfather, grandmother. And they would say, I was 6 years old. My parents took me to see the Transformers, and you killed Optimus Prime. Will you sign my underwear? So I've come to love it. I'm thrilled. I hope my book sells many times and that this reaches thousands of people with money to spend and a ticket to Amazon. And I'm really delighted to be here in this magnificent number. Thanks for the invite.
That's great. All right, so let's go back to, because the thing that you were invited to New York, that was G.I. Joe, right?
Yes.
Okay, so who was in that meeting? Was that Joe and Tom? I mean, who was it?
It was Joe and Tom.
That's Joe Bacall and Tom Griffin. Probably Jay
That's
was.
right. And they were it.
Yes.
Nobody else. And it was at the Hermitage Hotel on one of the Little Santa Monica or something, or on Santa Monica itself. Whatever it was still there. It was overpriced, and I didn't like it. They had this like suite of rooms on 2 floors, and it was really furnished like a Walmart special on rugs and furniture. And
Remember the rooms?
I liked them a lot, and I noticed something with Joe right away. And that is some of the fingers on one hand were fused and distorted. I knew what that was because my good friend, who was my friend on the Jonathan Winter show, and I met him on the Danny Kaye show, his daughter had been caught in a fire on the 2nd floor of her home.
Jamie Keller.
Badly burned. Jamie Keller.
Yeah.
You know this.
Sister.
And you know her hand was deformed.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very sensitive about it. And
Right.
Carl Reiner said to her and Debbie and and Shelley and Bitsy. He said, "You're lucky you have a built-in schmuck magnet. It will identify them and dump them."
Oh, there we go.
Mhm.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, I know that Doug knew Shelley very well and also knew some of the friends, Kobe, for one, and there were others, I'm sure.
I think
I'm
Buzz
trying to remember who they are. I see their face before me, and they all look like old Jews.
They are old Jews.
Well,
Oh, Jews.
how about that?
Mostly old Jews. Yeah, really.
But I really sympathize with Joe, and I think that may have endeared me to him slightly.
Yeah.
Anyway, they gave me the job, and I found out I had the job right before Carl Foreman's funeral. So Carl was a good friend, and he died of brain cancer, a horrible death. But that's why I found out. So that was a good day and a terrible day.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And so, all right. So, what did they tell you? They said, "Okay, here's the toy line." Or they give you that bread Bible? By the way, I saw one of those, a GI Joe Bible, like the ones we had in the red notebooks, was for sale.
There was no Bible. There was no Bible.
They just had.
They told me what it was.
Mm-hmm.
They showed me some action figures, and they said that they wanted this. They thought it would be a big hit, but there needed to be characters that were more than the ones printed up on the wrapper, like Snake Eyes. He's blind and he's a master of martial arts. Great. I don't know him. How do you know a blind guy is a master of martial arts? Well, you can show him kicking ass, and he's blind besides. But what else? If he was selling pencils at the street corner or playing the violin, maybe it would elicit. Anyway, they wanted me to do that. So they said, "That's it." And I said, "That's it?" "Yes." And then I told them why I wanted a 5-parter, and that was it. And I thought I'd never hear from them again, because who wants to spend for a 5-parter? But they shocked me, and I'm very glad they did.
At that point, they knew they were doing 65 half hours, right?
No, there were no 65s at that time. It was just do this pilot, these 5-part pilots.
So this was.
So I was given 58 or 60 scripts after I'd done it. After I'd written it, they said, "Please look at these." No, not GI Joe. That was Transformers.
Right.
I saw nothing. I saw nothing.
Wow.
All right. So when you got to it, I'm trying to figure out, because with this is where it's really murky to me, and yeah, I'm sure anybody else on this call knows the answer to this. I mean, I just took what was handed to me, but Larry Hama originally developed the early characters and did their bios and their names and all that. Is that correct? That is what I've always done.
I never saw that.
And then
Never saw anything.
Yeah, and then
other than a few action figures.
Were going parallel. Did they come before or after the show?
What was that?
The comic books.
I have no idea.
The comic books came. It was parallel, but the comic books beat out the show simply because it was quicker to get them into production.
Production time, yeah.
Also, they were doing the He-Man trick. And the He-Man trick was Mattel went to DC and said, "We've got a toy line. We want you to do a comic book called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. It doesn't have to be good. It just has to be printed," because that way they could say, "Oh, we're not basing the show on the toys. We're basing it on a comic book."
Right.
And that's what they did. The comic books for G.I. Joe and Transformers came first. So they had that fig leaf that it was based on a comic, not on a toy line.
Yeah, my friend Mike Halpern wrote.
Oh, right. I remember that Bible.
Which I'm just having to run.
Oh,
There's nothing I can do when a kid is kidnapped anywhere in West Los Angeles. But that was the alert.
You just.
okay.
Mine.
Amber Alert.
It's in English somewhere in the message, but yes.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a curfew at 8:00 tonight from 8 to 5:30. In case
Right.
you get.
I know. I have to get my pets in.
That's right. Well, you got a little time.
Mhm.
Yeah, but right. So Mike wrote this immense long Bible for He-Man, which actually had very little to do with the show. It was incredible backstory about all the He-Man world and universe and characters, because I started working on that show right at the very beginning. And it was, well, you've got this big guy named He-Man. He transforms. He's got a big cat. And there's a bad guy named Skeletor. Okay, go to it. So we all read the Bible and said, oh, this is nice. This is nice. This is nice. So.
Well, my dear friend Alan Oppenheimer was the voice of Skeletor.
Right.
Mhm.
And he's making a fortune recording messages for telephones for people in the voice of Skeletor. How about that?
Well, yeah, a lot of shows for us too. I mean, it was really amazing how in those days, every show seemed to have the exact same, voice actor crew. We brought a lot of
Mm-hmm.
like anybody else along. Yeah, I think probably the big one was Chris Latta, just because Joe saw him at some, comedy club in the village or something inside. I got to have this guy.
Right.
You just reminded me of a great true story about voice actors. Ricardo Montalban was a friend of mine. After doing 58 Fantasy Islands, I'm not surprised. Anyway, he was in Rome with his wife, and they're sitting on the Via Veneto. And as people approach him, they start giggling and looking at each other. And he's wondering what the hell this is about. And then a guy who was so gay, his feet never touched the ground, with a feather boa and lipstick and earrings, hoop earrings, sweeps down and he says, Senor Montalban, I'm so delighted to see you. I am your voice on Italian television.
That's
great.
That's the story behind Jerry Lewis's success in France. The guy that was dubbing him in French was ad-libbing stuff all the way through the Jerry Lewis movies.
No kidding.
And so, yeah, he was coming out a lot smarter and funnier in French.
Is that true? Like the French version was that different?
Enough. I mean,
Apparently.
yeah.
Yes, in the French version, he was buggering tattoo.
Okay, so this is our R-rated episode here, by the way.
Yeah. Gee, I've lost all of you. Let's see.
We got
Okay,
you.
you're back.
We got you.
Well,
We see a throbbing R, Ron.
What's that?
We see a throbbing R for you.
no, I'm just looking at
Okay.
yeah, I mean he's coming in, exactly like he was before. What I love is the verite camera that keeps moving around. That seems like real French New Wave.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, the first time we're going to get to dub Ron in French for the French version of this is going to be really funny.
Yeah, that's what we ought to do.
Yes.
Just put all sorts of ridiculous words, and I don't think we could quite match him. All right, you get the assignment. You're at the Hermitage. You get the assignment. How long does it take you to write it, and then what happened?
I think it took me 10 days.
Wow.
And
Series, that's a number, yeah.
it's no credit to me. I've always been fast and lucky that way. When I was an architect, I was called Flash Friedman because I could redesign in a old structure, a new jewelry store, and do all of the mechanicals and everything else, and design the facade and the signing in a day.
Mm-hmm.
Most people take a week. So luckily, I have that same capacity as a writer, and I have that same capacity as a painter, and I'm just lucky. So
Okay, you get done.
they were surprised, and my agent said, "Don't hand it in. They'll think it's shit.
Right.
Wait 3 weeks." I said, "No." They said they were in a hurry, so I sent it to them, and they responded immediately. And luckily, I had very few notes. Really, I just one of the best jobs I ever had, and they were always appreciative. The only time I hit a clinker was in my first draft for the Transformers the movie, Joe and Tom called me in, and Tom said, "You made the villains too interesting. We want this where the Transformers, the Autobots have to be interesting. We want to rewrite." I said, "Fine, pay me. I have a deal." No, you owe us. And I said, "Sorry, I have a deal." So they sucked it up and they paid me, which meant I had 2 versions of the Transformers, the movies. And when Michael Bay did his movie, he used a lot of stuff from the first version and a lot of stuff from the second, and even in the second Transformers, the live one, he used stuff. If this had been a Writers Guild deal, I'd be speaking to you from the south of France,
You would.
from my yacht.
Your yachet. Did Michael Bay get a copy? Did he have access to those scripts, or he just beamed into whatever?
I'm sure he had access to everything, because I recognized too much of my storyline from the original movie and too many of the characters doing what they did in my original script.
Right.
So I know he used it, cannibalized it, and I've really never been comfortable with what Michael Bay has done, because to me, there's no heart. And seeing a kid in jeopardy, that's fine if you're a kid, but the audience for the Transformers has matured. They're now adults, some in middle age, some beyond. And they're not interested in watching a kid in jeopardy unless it's peripheral to seeing a romance at an adult level or something more compelling. And I think they've missed the boat. Sure, it made a ton of money, but to me, it didn't honor the property and didn't honor the beginning of the property, which was designed to have heart and designed to have light and dark, love and hate, life and death. And I insisted on that because I said, Walt Disney has always known this works. Every one of his special children's movies has worked because the family, the adults, love it too, because they recognize it's really about real life. People die, people don't. And you have to have the dark and the light. You have to have the yin and the yang. So they said, okay, we'll tell you who to kill. And then they said, you have to kill Optimus Prime, which I fought. I said, you're killing Big Daddy. You're killing the Big Daddy in Roman mythology, in Greek mythology, in Norse mythology. You can't just slay him. You got to replace him with an equal, and there is no equal. He's been established. If you kill him, you'll have to resurrect him in 6 months. They had to, and they did.
Yeah.
So real quick, all right, Doug, you
Yeah.
and I pretty much walked in the door at Sunbow at the same moment. Well, I was doing, I guess I was good.
You were already working with G.I. Joe, though, right?
Yeah, I was already working with Steve, and in the ghost story editing where everybody knew it wasn't, everybody knew I was a ghost. But yeah, so I guess I'd already been working with them. I think we were not. They'd moved out of the Hermitage at that point. I think we were at the Westwood Marquee, which is now the W, right?
Right, no doubt. Because I remember walking into the elevator with you and saying, "Oh, who are you?" It's like, "Well, who are you?" "Well, I'm going to go see Tom and Joe." "Oh, so am I." "Really?
Yeah.
Well, going to be single combat or what?"
Yeah. No, it turned out you were Transformers and I was G.I. Joe in the beginning. Remember?
Honestly, what I remember was that I was surprised that they put me on Joe and you on Transformers. And in retrospect, so maybe it was a later switch, but I think the reason was that they wanted the G.I. Joe sensibility injected into Transformers.
Right.
And I figured, well, what the hell? How can he ruin G.I. Joe? Doug will be fine because.
No, that is the single most modest statement anybody's ever made. The fact of the matter is, we have the incompetent boob from G.I. Joe. We'll move him over to Transformers because you can't mess up Transformers. That's probably really how it happened. It's okay. My recollection of it in the book, and once again, I tried to get Tom on. Tom. Just are not wanting to show up on these things. Just
right.
you really should. I mean, to you know, because Joe's not with us anymore.
Joe
you know,
would have, yeah.
were the guys that really, you know, I mean, they were the guys. And, but, you know, they don't, you know, they're just not, you know, they don't want to be hanging around on a Sunday afternoon talking about, you know, stuff that we, however, on the other hand, are perfectly happy doing that. But anyway, so, yeah, I remember it as when we started, because I remember feeling there was kind of a bait and switch. You know, they said, we want you to be an associate producer. And, you know, I was like, you know, and I had no idea what to do. You know, I show up, and because I remember you were going to the sweetening sessions for Transformers really early on, because I remember, you and I went there together.
Okay, yeah, I don't remember that at all. I remember the Joe sessions, but I don't remember Transformers.
I remember what you were saying after. You may have been referring to Joe, but I remember we walked out of him one day and you were saying, you know, if they just cleaned up the animation, they got all the shots right, they synced it, you could run these things as movies.
Oh, yeah, and they could have.
Yeah, and they could have. I mean,
35 millimeter.
Yeah. Yeah, because they looked really good. I mean, it was this weird thing, you know, all of a sudden I'm sitting in this, you know, giant screening room. I think it's just you and I, you know, and it's like, wow, I feel like I'm in the business now.
Oh, yeah, it was fun.
And they'd screen it. I didn't really know what I was supposed to be listening for.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just, I guess if I couldn't understand the dialogue or.
Well, that was it. The thing, the nice thing that they finally did was they put the sound on TV monitors, not on the big theater monitors, because the theater monitors, everything sounded awesome, but it was nothing like what you would get on a TV set.
Right.
So the guy, Steve Brown, who was the post-production supervisor, was a great guy. And he said, you know what, we should really be putting these on TV monitors so you can hear, because my big thing was the effects would get so damn loud, you couldn't hear the dialogue. So
That's right.
That was usually my big complaint, and I would call them on it. And actually, I had one of the engineers who actually made a death threat against me because he got so pissed off. I felt like, okay, I've arrived. I'm cool. I'm a real Joe. But they were neat sessions because you really saw how good the episodes were.
Yeah. Yeah, you really did. I mean, they look great in that size. I mean, that's what's really funny. I mean, some theater, you know, that's like face down in the alley when you could open up theaters again, ought to just project them one time.
Just
and
like the dinky fourplexes, yeah.
You know, because I mean, there really is a difference watching them in a giant environment like that than watching them even on a giant screen TV. It's a different world.
May I add a word about the sound? When my wife and I went to the premiere showing of the Transformers the movie, the sound of the music was so fucking loud, you heard very little dialogue.
Yeah.
And it pissed me off. And Joe and Tom says, what do you think? I said, I can't think, I'm deaf.
Well, I tell a story in the book, but at the movie, the Transformers the movie screening, I'm sitting there watching the movie, and there's this guy cursing behind me the whole time, and I think it was the guy you were talking about, the sound guy.
Yeah.
What's he cursing about? You know, I'm thinking, yeah, this isn't, you know, Citizen Kane, but it's not that bad. And yeah, later on, he says, "Hey, Flint, we never actually met, you know, because I was the guy in the sound booth over at Paramount. Did you hear the Billy Dolby track? I mean, did you hear that?"
Yeah.
I didn't hear it when we were at Paramount.
Yeah.
I think it was the commercial taint, because where Tom and Joe came from was commercials. And a commercial always comes in at 4,000 decibels.
That's
To
right.
wake the dead, so you will buy the pills.
That's
Yeah,
right.
no, it's true. I think that was one of the things that helped us, you know, in a funny way, because they didn't feel like any other shows. You know, everything else was really mixed down subtle. I mean, is that true? But well, you guys both worked on a lot of stuff before this. Was our stuff just mixed differently?
Oh,
Not really. It was the same process, but I think it was the sensibilities applied to it.
yeah.
It was.
Different. There was not the network TV sensibility. There was the we do the commercials.
The feature.
Because I mean, you tell people it's interesting. See if you guys agree with this, but I'll tell people we were well aware of the fact we were doing 22-minute, you know, commercials disguised as TV shows. Okay, we knew that. and people, you get the people say, well, the jackbooted octopuses of capitalism were dead. No, the truth is that was more creative freedom than I ever had anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was like, I mean, the Hasbro guys. Doug and I went down to Tijuana with Bob Prupus. All right, that's all. Kirk Bazzigian.
Right, that's it. Right.
Well, I mean, to bring up a point, you talk about a commercial. One of the best TV shows that was ever on the air was Route 66, and that came about because Chevrolet said, we've redesigned the Corvette. We want to promote it. We'll give it to you for a show. And Sterling Siliphant had this great idea about two guys who previously had been hitchhiking around America. But no, they could get in a Corvette. That's perfectly all right.
Oh, yeah.
And, you ended up with Route 66.
Right. And I never felt like these shows were commercials. I mean, I knew based on characters who happened to be toys, but as long as you didn't, disrespect the toy, so to speak, you could do whatever you wanted as long as it was a great story. I mean, I worked on GoBots before Transformers, and night and day, totally different. Transformers felt like a real show. GoBots was like a Hanna-Barbera show that was simulated action, simulated humor, and God bless the guys who worked on it because they were great, but such a different show.
Let me give a brief history here about, because this will tie in with our time at Ruby Spears, how GoBots came about because of Transformers. The Hasbro guys had been going around to every studio in Hollywood with the toy line. They had just acquired the Japanese toys, the license for the Japanese toys, and they had not yet done the packaging of the character development, but they were coming to literally every single studio and showing what they had and seeing if anybody wanted to partner with them. And when they showed this to Joe and Ken, I was practically salivating. I was going, Joe, this is what I've been telling you about, giant robots. This is going to be the next big thing.
That's right.
Jump on this, get on it, and we're going to ride the gravy train. And Joe said, nah, I got a better idea. We're going to do a show about a teenage boy who turns into a car. And they went across the street over to Hanna-Barbera, and Hanna-Barbera dismissed them and then immediately put their artists and writers to work ripping it off. So
ripping off.
Yeah.
Wow. And I didn't know any of that. What I do remember is we went for lunch. Yeah, we used to, at Ruby Spears, we'd go to these, funky lunches, and we went to Japantown. I didn't even know there was a Japantown.
Oh, yeah.
This store, and I bought these transforming cars, and was like, I was just amazed. I had a plane and a car. Basically it would have been, Starscream and Bumblebee. I'm like, I'm bringing them home, kind of amazed. They're really, even I could transform them. They were really primitive. And what was really funny at that exact moment, we're developing kid TV shows, and it never crossed my mind to turn that into a show.
Oh, wow.
2 minutes later, Turbo Teens. Yeah, never crossed my mind, meaning for 3 days, and then Turbo Teen came in. Which,
Right.
I talk about Ruby Spears lunches and Turbo Teen. I lasted 15 minutes on Turbo Teen. And Joe realized he did not want me anywhere near that show, so he put me on something else. But I went over to see John Dorman in the the storyboard department. And at that time, they had moved John out of the main Ruby Spears studio into John's crew. They moved into the old Cheech and Chong offices, which, if you know John's crew, that was the best place to put them.
There was a reason those guys were quarantined. Okay, in the art department, you were taking your life in your own hands.
Yeah. But anyway, I go over to have lunch with John, and they were literally screaming curses out loud at a writer for writing a Turbo Teen script where the boy, as a car, climbs up on a diving board, jumps on it, does a swan dive as a car, hits the pool, swims over to a rowboat, and climbs in. And they're expected to storyboard this.
Oh,
And
my
they were just
God.
like screaming curses at this guy's name. So
That must have been one of the live action writers who was slumming.
you know.
By the way, are any of you aware of Hasbro's biggest failure? It was a show called Air Raiders. And the idea was they were producing a line of air-driven toys, characters, vehicles, and so on. And they came to me and I said, 5 parts? Yes. So I wrote the 5-part miniseries for Air Raiders, which was about warring planets. And it was a bit of a ripoff of Dune, in which there was no air. So air was the commodity, and air, of course, drove the characters. I have never seen better model sheets. I've never seen more exciting action figures. They didn't make the figures yet, but I mean, the model sheets, they were fabulous. And also the toys looked great. Anyway, they were pleased with the script and they sent me the toys. Well, the first one was an action figure, which was maybe 6 inches tall, connected to a rubber hose. At the end of the hose was a rubber bulb. You squeezed it, and the character had a seizure.
By the way, Ron, yeah, so the toys suck.
Then the rocket launchers, you'd have these rockets with the hose and the bulb, and they go, and they killed it.
You know what? But I want to say 2 things. First of all, you and I worked on that one together. And actually, what you ended up writing was a 3-part miniseries, which was excellent. It was so good. And I wrote some episodes. And for my money,
I had no idea, Doug. That's great.
Well, isn't that interesting? But you and I worked on it together. I thought it was going to be the next G.I. Joe Transformers blend because I thought it was so
did
good.
I.
And at Toy Fair, the story I got, and it's because the toys suck, they only had $30 million worth of advance sales for the toys. Only $30 million.
Wow.
Chump change. We're just going to drop kick this one and take the loss. And it was like, oh my God.
That's kind of what happened with Inhumanoids, only we were actually in production on the series when they canceled the toy line. They basically said, finish the series, and as long as we don't get an FCC complaint, you guys can do whatever you want. You know?
I would have loved it if we had that situation.
The Humanoids toys actually came out. That was more series. I mean, there was stuff that didn't even come out. You know, and Humanoids, I think all they didn't have was, there was sort of like the back 3, and there were some of those characters who were designed, and I saw models of them, but they never came out. But it was really Visionaries that where they just you know, the toy line was canceled before the show aired, and they kind of finished it out, and it's where we were closing down the office.
Right.
I remember, you know, just go to and nobody cares.
Do you remember when the guys that originated Visionaries came in to show us the idea?
Yeah.
They brought in an upside down plastic trash can that was their play set. And they had He-Man action figures that they had carved out the chests and stuck generic hologram stickers on.
Okay.
And they said, this is the great idea we had. And I remember sitting there looking at it and going, this is, my God, this is what gets people's attention.
Those were the Gentili brothers, right?
Yeah, we worked as hard as we could on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny, you know, because there was a whole, that was sort of the one and only time I remember actually meeting the toy designers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where it was somebody that came out and like pitched an original idea, and I had no idea that anybody did that for a living. And I remember hanging out with them for a long time. And well, Visionaries, we'll bring everybody back for Visionaries because that's like 2 years after all the. But that's actually one of the most fascinating shows. Okay, so we're still in 84, 85.
Back.
Ron at this moment is writing Transformers the movie. You and I are you know, getting introduced to this whole business and finding out about things like I mean, Joe and Tom figured out really quickly what I was good at and what I wasn't good at. And they probably, you know, this was for you too, except you were much more kind of coherent than I was. But they remember they brought Stephen Heth in for post,
Right,
Charlie
right,
in for post,
right.
and I've never been able to remember her last name, but Devin.
Oh,
And
and then Eric Early too.
Eric Early, yes, Eric
Yeah.
Early, who's not the same Eric Early that's running for Congress, but yes, Eric
No?
Early.
Oh, too bad. Okay.
Eric Early. But yes, Eric Early, and we had a whole post-production department. I don't know whether it was the same reason, but Tom and Joe just decided, okay, we'll send Flint. He's good with he develops stuff well, he writes scripts well, he can edit the scripts, and he can go to the voice recordings. But I mean, we're not sending him to Telecity. He doesn't even know what it is. And because Telecity was just a recipe for something horrible to happen. You actually had to pay attention. There's 6 monitors.
Well, okay, you can tell how tech savvy I am. Telecine is that's not editing. That's after editing, where they're mixing it into the final. Or what is it?
Yeah, exactly. It's highly technical, but lots of stuff can go wrong. And it's like, I mean, I didn't learn that in film school. I never even heard the word before. It sounded like it's a TV channel or something to me.
Because I used to go to the Glen mixing sessions all the time because that was big fun.
Yes.
Going to the movies.
May I say a word about the actual toy manufacturer? Because
Sure.
I got to work with 2 of them. One of them was for the Bionic 6. And the toy manufacturers were from New York and Japan. And I saw the way they thought about things, which was, how can we do it cheaper so it won't break on the first play? And then I had the distinct semi-pleasure of working with Avi Arad, who with his partner, Ike Perlmutter, made all the action figures for Marvel, beginning with the X-Men.
Right.
And Avi was the big producer when and Stan Lee created the Marvel Action Hour. And I talked to Avi because he showed me some of the molds that were made for the X-Men that were going to be made for the Marvel Action Hour. And I said, how do you make sure these work? And he said, well, what I always do is I'll look at the first thing they make and I'll break it. Then they know who they're dealing with. Yeah. So Avi, and I've come to like Avi, but Avi's an Israeli, and those that work for Avi soon begin to see the Palestinian side of every issue.
Right.
So he was an animated guy, or what was? Because I remember the name. I mean, it's like one of these names that was always around. I never knew
became kind of the president of Marvel or Revlon or whoever.
Yeah, Avi was the president of Marvel.
Yeah.
And he was the one that went back to Stan's original Spider-Man. And that's what made it work. I don't know if I said this to you, but Stan was treated like shit.
Yeah, sure.
I had so many meetings with him, and he found these fringe producers who paid me to write 2 different Fantastic Four movies, a Mighty Thor movie, and Luke Cage, and an Iron Man. These producers would never get anything produced. And the reason was they hoped to get it produced because Stan Lee's name was attached.
Right.
But they found out at these meetings, and so did I, it didn't mean a thing. People would say, in effect, when Stan would have a comment, they'd say, hey, you do comic books. These are grown-up movies. So they treated him like shit until Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So it was sad. That always pained him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because Marvel had. I mean, even in my time, because I mean, the first time I met Stan Lee was really early on. I was in film school, and they wanted to do Buck Rogers, right, at Marvel, and this was when David DePatie was running Marvel Studios, and so they bring Stan Lee in as the closer at the end of this thing. And I remember, I mean, this story has a happy ending because things worked out just fine for Stan for the next 40 years. But I remember thinking, wow, this is the guy that, like, I used to read all of his stuff on the comic books. And he was talking to me, and when I was a kid and all that, and this is the real Stan Lee. And he's like, even I, as naive as you could possibly get, realized this was the closer, and he's kind of like this guy that's not really being allowed to do anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Kirby, who we were very familiar with at Ruby Spears. I mean, it's in the book, but yeah, I mean, Joe set me up. Hey, go work with Jack. I had no idea who Jack was.
Yeah,
right?
that's amazing. Yeah.
I asked Buzz later on, why didn't you tell me that was Jack? And Buzz, well, we assumed you knew. It's like, no.
Everybody was peeking around the door watching.
You know what's really funny is we got 4 of the few people in that period of animation who were not primarily comic book guys. Yeah, I mean, which is actually pretty unusual when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Doug's like some guy from Harvard. What was your journey from Harvard to writing cartoons?
Yeah, well, I needed to make a living as a writer, you know? What happened to me was I was just trying to write all kinds of different stuff. When I was a little kid growing up, we lived in the Valley. The neighbors across the street, the Pattersons, Ray Patterson was a Disney animator, animated the, not the dancing hippos, but the dancing elephants on Fantasia. His wife, June Patterson, was an ink and painter, and she was in charge of the department that did like the candles going up, Ave Maria, Night on Bald Mountain. And they used rouge on the cells directly to give it the right glowing light. So those were our best friends when I was a little kid. Then when I was trying to get stuff moving, Ray's old mother was having a birthday party. And for some reason I was invited. I went over there, had a great time, got really drunk, and so did Ray. And he said, Rob, you ought to come down to the studio sometime. And I said, okay, I'd love to. So I did, and he introduced me to the head of Sky Art, Scott, who was the head of development. And he handed me a bunch of Captain Caveman scripts and said, okay, kid, do some outlines for these. So I did, and dropped them off. And then a few months later, I was working as a driver for Super Night at the Super Bowl. And we had to bring back the Tom and Jerry footage back to Hanna-Barbera because they were using it that year. So I brought it back. And when I came in, I thought, okay, I'm just going to see if Art ever read this stuff or not. And I went in and said, hey, Art, it's Doug. He said, oh, okay, you start on Monday. Your salary is $238 a week. And I thought, whoa, I struck it rich. So that's how I got started.
Well,
You can still get that.
Maybe. I'm old though.
Like the first week he was in LA. Or you just walked in the door at Filmation and got hired like instantly or something. Wasn't it like that?
Who are you talking to?
You and Buzz.
Me?
Buzz.
No, I was in LA for a couple of months, but yeah, I had been drafted, and when I fulfilled my service, I was going to go to film school at USC, but that didn't start until October. I was discharged in February. So I just went around looking for work, like you say, like a driver or something. And Art Nadell was bored out of his mind because it was hiatus season. And he told the receptionist, yeah, send him back. Give me somebody to talk to kill the afternoon.
Oh, funny.
And one thing led to another, and that was how my career started.
Oh, that's great.
And Art Nadell has a history. As long as we're talking about all the stuff nobody ever talks about,
Right.
Like, I mean, people are falling asleep all over the country right now listening to this, but it's
All 30 of them, right?
told me this story about Art Nadell, and that was he was a director on what was it? The Rifleman, right?
The Rifleman, yeah.
Okay.
All right, who is the other director on The Rifleman? Anybody know this?
I know, but I'll let somebody else.
No.
Sam.
Yeah.
What?
Truffaut. Truffaut.
Nadell, you watch the show, and one episode is people are cheating in Luke's school, and there's no use for a rifle anywhere, in the story. Next one is the Wild Bunch comes.
Oh my God!
The skidsiest show ever done because you had simultaneous the most anti-violence, person in history of television, which is saying quite a lot. And then the original kind of Carnage Meister doing the show.
Yeah.
So anyway,
What was the star's name again? I forget.
Chuck Connors.
Chuck Connors.
Connors.
Yeah.
Okay, Chuck Connors, Aaron Spelling was an extra on a Rifleman.
Wow.
And he saw Chuck Connors go up behind the network executive and cold cock him, knocked him down because Chuck Connors was a fucking maniac. I met him and he was telling me he was fucking some British star. That was what his conversation. And he was a maniac. He was a baseball player and he liked to throw the ball at anybody standing about 40 feet away. He was a menace.
Wow.
A menace.
And they gave him a gun? Good Lord.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Did he ever do a show after that? I mean, he was so
Oh yeah.
memorable. You know, Stony Burke, right? Was
He
that
did a
him?
number. He did a number of shows after that, either in the cast or as a guest star.
Wow.
Yeah.
You
that-
just made me think of the guy who played Bat Masterson, Hugh. What was his last name?
Brian.
Hugh O'Brien.
Yes, Hugh O'Brien. He founded a scholarship for actors with UCLA. Every year, the winner was usually a beautiful girl, and she'd have to meet him in his hotel room,
Oh, good Lord.
and he'd be standing there naked.
No.
Yes. So he was ahead of his time.
He was.
Harvey Weinstein had to do a catch-up.
Yeah.
Oh man. A guy who's like a star on one of these shows doing that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, this was if you've ever read William Goldman's book, I mean, he doesn't talk about the sexual escapades, but he talked about one star. He wouldn't identify him, but the star would just go around. If he saw something he liked in somebody's personal
You bet.
possessions, he'd take it. And if you called him on it, he'd laugh like it was a joke, and then he'd see that you got fired. So if he stole something from you, you just turned in a receipt to the production manager, and the production manager paid for it.
Wow.
Well, I've been teaching at Chapman for almost 15 years, and I taught 18 years at USC. And when Weinstein's curse came to light, all my students asked the same question. Did you know this was going on? And I said, everybody knew. Not only did everybody knew, that was the deal.
Right.
And everybody knew if they were at all desirable or breathing, they could be a target. I said, but it was always hushed up. And anybody that blew the whistle never worked again. It was that simple. And nobody had the guts to come forward because they knew that meant you're done in the business. And it was that bad, and I saw it work that way too many times. I found it really low and disgusting, particularly because they abused these kids. And one of them was a girl, Pam, I forget her name. She was doing the Chevy commercial, and she was brought out to Hollywood. And she was just a lovely person. Well, she was screwed and screwed over so often that I think she had a nervous breakdown. It was terrible to see that, particularly since I have a daughter. The whole idea that these predators are lurking.
Wow.
Wow. So it was, not only was it widespread, but there were agents who came to see you, and they had pictures of their female clients naked, naming their specialties. When I was doing the Jonathan Winters shows, the guy came in to see me.
Oh.
I couldn't, just to me, so low.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
No,
did anybody know about this? Everybody.
Very little of that. I mean, somehow the Baroness, I don't know. There's nothing ever happened there. I mean, you ran into, you animate these cartoon characters. I mean, so there was like, I never saw anything like that ever in animation.
None of us were important enough.
Well, I saw most of it
enough.
when I was doing Variety. Because Variety, they're dancers, there are a lot of actresses to come in and do skits, and they have to be simpatico or built or something. And I saw them sort of ruffled through, moved along like cattle. And I figured out what really bothers me about it. And that is that in this business, talent and skill that you develop is really everything. That's your hallmark as a person, as an artist. I'm proud of what I did, and I always did my best. You all did too. None of you ever did less than your best. But to have that mean nothing, to have what your skills are mean nothing. And so the only thing is, will you go down on him or not? That to me is crazy. Anyway, I still get heated about it. I just, what
Sure.
it does is it like puts a curse on all those who've had achievements. So instead of saying, yeah, she's really good, they say, oh, she had to do that on her back. And Betty Davis was famous for saying she was the only star that didn't get there on her back. But to me, that's not a measure of any artist. That means nothing. That, to have that mean everything, boy.
Yikes.
No, that's like something that I just never encountered. I mean, not until much later, and in a totally different form. And that was Lynn Varley, Frank Miller's wife, saying, "Hey, I want you to go with Frank to this Sin City stuff. I'm not going. Those guys are creeps." And so I was there as a bouncer, basically. Bouncer.
You've had a checkered career.
It's pretty funny, but I mean, it's pretty evident. And then Comic-Con Sin City 2, we're sitting in a tent, and all the directors are there, and my daughter, who then 11 years old, was Frank's PA. Okay, and we're sitting in the tent at the party, and I mean, it's cool. I mean, there's Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino. We're all sitting in the tent, and all of a sudden I see my daughter go ashen white, and she turns to me, "They have strippers here." And, it's like, I mean, we were just, we like, our shadow was there a long time after we left, and I thought people think, oh man, you really ran out because of that. You would have thought I was the father of the year. I mean, when I ran into you guys later on, I thought, pretty got her out of there. It was pretty. But all right, sorry, this is all long after 1985.
Or before, yeah.
Well, we've kind of moved over to 5, because by the time I think you and I really started at Sunbow, it was 85. And I think Ron was actively writing the script, because I think your first draft dropped probably about March of 85. Does that make sense to you?
For the movie, you mean the Transformers movie for Ron? Yeah. Because when I came in, a lot of the Joe stuff, or the first miniseries, I think had already been produced, and I got started working on storyboards after the miniseries, and so that's where I started.
Right.
And I'm sure Ron had since moved on. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's what I think. No, he did you ever write anything else for them after that? After the Transformers the movie?
The second miniseries for Joe with the Fatal Fluffies.
Oh, of course.
That was Ron.
Was that after the Transformer movie, Ron?
What was that again?
Well, it was the second 5-part miniseries for G.I. Joe. And
yes.
I remember there were things called the Fatal Fluffies, which was one of your creations that was very distinctive. And that was the second.
Thanks. I did 3 5-parters for G.I. Joe. And I still have the review in TV Guide, which raved about it.
Oh,
I couldn't believe that. It was one of the best reviews I ever received.
Oh, it was. I mean, that was what we all forget now. Is the first time I saw the 5-parter. I mean, I show up, Steve Gerber saying, "You got to see this. We're doing a show." Real Fists. That was it.
Real Fists, man.
Real Fists.
Yeah.
Saturday morning. And we sat there and watched it. He'd probably seen it 4 times. And we just sat there and watched through all 5 episodes. And we couldn't believe they were doing stuff like that, for animation, for a TV show.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, this is a whole new world.
It was surprising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, I'm losing my battery.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to have to sign off.
No, we only have.
Before I flame out.
We'll say really bad stuff about you after you leave, but no, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you for coming in.
It's been wonderful being with you.
Great to
and
see you,
seeing
Ron.
the faces. It's terrific. And Buzz, I think we met briefly. Steve Gerber introduced us. I haven't seen you since. It's nice to see you again.
Nice seeing
You're
you
all
again. You look
terrific.
great.
And we're very lucky to have been able to do what we did and to
Yes.
still be doing something.
You'll be doing
Terrific.
it. Yeah.
So thanks, guys. Great.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye. I mean, yeah, because in the day, and that's one of the things that's easy to forget is that, like, you know, like, well, I remember Ron from like a couple parties, like a premiere party or Christmas party or something like that. That's all, you know. I mean, it's not like he was in the office.
Mhm.
And you and I mean, would see each other, you know, frequently, but I mean, it was literally one's coming in the door, the other, because we were on totally different projects all the time. Whereas Buzz was, you know, kind of always around once he got there. I mean, yeah, and you know, Steve, you know, kind of, it was there a lot.
Yeah.
And then, no, it's kind of fascinating. So
Well, you remember Sanoke worked at UCLA at the time.
right?
So I had plenty of reason to want to be down in Westwood all the time.
That's right. And
Yeah.
I mean, man, we had our own parking space in Westwood.
I know.
That was the best part of the whole thing.
Happening. I remember I'd drive down. If I was late, I'd drive down. If I wasn't, I'd just walk down. You know.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, because it's, you know, it's kind of the 50-50. Or if I was going up to D&D, you were up at the Dungeon and Dragon Mansion, were you, Doug?
No, I never was.
Never got there.
Never. I was astounded at all the amazingness that I read in the book. It's like, what? I was never there. Oh,
I am quite sure you were there, and I'm trying to remember when. Because you were other places. Remember, there was like some party in Malibu we had. There was like an actual 80s hot tub. We were all
actually don't. Maybe I had too good a time, and I've been mind wiped. But no, if the Dungeon and Dragon Mansion was up on Summit Ridge, I mean,
Yeah.
I used to go up on Summit Ridge before they built anything up there, because we used to live somewhat in that neighborhood, and we had a friend who lived on San Isidro, and we used to go up there and ride his dirt bike when it was all vacant lots. But
what we knew until this. I mean, here's what's fascinating. It's kind of like when you talk about stuff this long after. I never grew up in LA. I always assumed you came. I was associated with New York, the East Coast. I know you grew up in LA. I mean, it's like when somebody dies, you find out all sorts of stuff about them you never knew when they were alive.
Right. That's right.
It's kind of like a you know, funeral that, you know, yeah, and I've got to believe at some point you were up there, because there were enough like birthday parties and stuff like that up there.
You know, it's possible. I may remember it someday and wake up going, "Oh my God!" But right now, nada.
Well, the mid 80s were like the 60s. If you remember them, you really weren't there.
That's right. That's right.
Except for like the thing that's notable, just, you know, I mean, now that we've had our R-rated show, is I don't remember anybody on drugs. I very rarely remember anybody drunk. Of course, I have a weird sort of inability to notice that somebody's drunk. But I mean, but there was not that. It was not like there was, you know, I mean, you know, it's certainly, I'm talking about Sunbow. I'm not talking about D&D. You know, I mean, I just never saw it. We didn't like even talk about it.
Sunbow, during working hours, people were very, very on, you know.
Oh yeah.
Nobody showed up impaired during working hours.
Yeah.
You know,
We worked too long and too hard. You know,
yeah.
you couldn't be impaired.
Yeah. No, I know.
Rigorous.
You were constantly running around. I mean, the thing that was fun about it, you know, because I didn't really capture that in the book as well, as what a day felt like. And a day would feel like you get there in the morning and you're, you know, talking to Jay on the phone, you know, getting script notes. You're going, then you got to go over to Wally Burr's. And he was in various different places. He was in on Sunset. On Ventura at one point.
Yeah.
And later on, he was in that place on Hollywood.
Magnolia?
What?
Was it on Magnolia, the last one?
Well, the one I really no, the last one was on Hollywood Way. Almost, you would think you're at the Bank Airport. They're right next to
Yeah.
I'm sure you're right. Yeah, that sounds right.
Or Allied Trains, which is still there. The building is still there. And I was in that studio, worked with Wally Burr. Once again, I'm violating the 85 rule, but I think it was doing Mission Impossible for Infogrames. Yeah. And we went in there, and it was still a shrine, like the My Little Pony poster was up.
Funny.
And not movie posters, you know, like the posters for the shows. Talk walking in there, and it was like that little green room that you would wait in, and and be insulted by Casey Kasem and stuff like that. That was like absolutely intact. Nothing had changed. Probably the same candy in the bowl.
Right.
Nobody was going to eat that stuff. I mean, it was the weirdest thing. It was. I mean, it was just this time capsule, and that had to be.
Was his daughter still working there?
No, Wally. I remember. Not that I remember. I mean, I just remember going in there. Wally was there. Amazingly unchanged. I mean, he was pretty much still Wally till shortly before he died. I mean, he was like unchanged.
Well, once he said, "Doug, don't tell anybody, but I'm 80. But I don't want anybody to know because they might not let me work."
Because I remember calculating one day because he was talking about he was a tank guy in World War II.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Yeah, really.
He had the hearing problems, which is an interesting problem for a voice director. But it never showed up in the work.
No, and he probably wasn't really 80. He was probably closer to 90, and he was shading it for me.
It was World War I.
Yeah, really.
But
we had you talk about people having disabilities or handicaps that you think would disqualify them. Filmation for a long time had a art director who was completely colorblind. All the characters were always purple and green, and he would never color them any other colors. And
oh my God.
No, but sometimes that, like, I think Paul Gauguin had some funky eye problem, and that that led to his color schemes.
Yeah.
What else should we be talking about here? I mean, this is kind of the Ron show, which is great. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Because I know a lot of that. I never knew. And that's sort of what I view this thing as for, is like finding out all the stuff I never knew at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just. I mean, because the thing we never. The other thing that was cool about The Office. Remember whenever Carol would come in time. Carol would come in town. We'd always go to like whatever the coolest restaurant. In LA.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
It was always
the best clubhouse. It was a wonderful clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was. It was a fabulous clubhouse. And,
I mean, no hot tub, but still pretty good. Pretty good.
It was great to see Hildy. She's like eerily unchanged.
Yeah.
Joe's memorial service. That was just. I mean,
well, if this is going to be the R-rated show, we should tell the story without naming names of the female employee who used to like to sunbathe on the roof of the building during lunch hour.
That's right.
And the telephone guy came in. This back in the days when you actually had wires on the telephone.
I don't even know this story.
Oh yeah. She was up there, and we knew this, and we stayed away from the roof while she was there.
Mm-hmm.
So she's up there, and the telephone guy comes in. He's got to add something to the junction box. Where is it? We go without thinking on the roof, and then the next thing we hear is a scream, and this guy comes running down, red-faced, followed a few minutes later by the employee pulling her clothes on and saying, "Don't ever do that again."
That's right. We got sort of chewed out for that one.
I didn't even know about. I mean, that was just such a funny place to work.
Yeah.
Out in the doorway, and that belonged before homeless stuff was fashionable.
We opened the door, and the guy.
He'd fall over. He'd fall in because the door opened inwards. And it was a really cool place. Remember, we had the USS Flag. If I remember for not something, that was it'd be like it was a coffee table. And I'd be like, It was back when people could smoke in public places.
Yeah,
That's right.
When did Roger? Well, Roger was always based in New York, right? Was he based?
Yeah. And then he came out. I mean, and I'm not sure when. It all kind of blends.
Yeah, for anybody still watching, we're talking about Roger Slifer, who was the New York, and he became later on the New York version of You and I. It's kind of
That's right.
He didn't really write, but he was the post guy. Everybody had their specialties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, by the end when we got super staffs. And Roger, what was he on? He was on
Little Ponies.
he and I worked on a few things. He
Yeah.
worked with me on robotics,
Robotics, yes.
and then he and I worked on Conan the Adventurer. By that time, we had graduated. They gave us sort of an honorary producer's title, which was pretty neat.
Yeah, Chris
Although,
was editing.
we did the same stuff we always did as associate producers. But
Had a better title.
what's that?
He had a better title.
Better title, way better title. And I'm not sure if he might have worked on some of the other squishy shows I worked on, like Potato Head Kids and Glow Friends. He might have been the New York liaison for that.
Oh, Squishy. Okay, let's pause on Squishy for a second. There
Okay.
were two kinds of shows. There were toasters and squishies. I remember Linda Wolverton had those terms, and the squishies were, they were could be girl shows, but little kid shows, and toasters were, Transformers was the ultimate toaster show, and every show was either a toaster or a squishy.
Squishy goes all the way back to Filmation in the 70s. They had one of the artists had drawn a picture of you remember the famous art studio? Can you draw the pirate? Can you draw the
Sure.
panda type thing?
Sure, on the matchbook.
Well, they did a parody of that, of this kitten that had been run over, and said, "Can you draw Squishy?"
Ooh.
And that was where the term squishy originated in the industry.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, who else in the universe knows this stuff? Okay, Buzz is the only. Maybe Mark Evanier knows this stuff, but nobody other.
Yeah. Gordon Kent would have known.
Yeah.
I would have known.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, Gordon was really fascinating. I mean, I view this as kind of like just a random talk version of the show. People
Yeah.
probably falling asleep across the country right now, but yeah, I mean, it's stuff you'll never hear anywhere. Gordon is an interesting guy to talk about because, like, for G.I. Joe, I remember Jay saying, I find Gordon Kent to be a really unique talent. He wrote the silliest episode, which was the plant episode.
Mm-hmm.
Darkest episode, which was basically his version of Taxi Driver or something. I mean, the closest that G.I. Joe got to that.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote the most sci-fi episode, which is the Egyptian Book of the Dead one.
Right.
Which was like a premise I had, but and Gordon said, "I'll do that." It's like, oh, okay, good, because I don't think he would have immediately thought I wanted to do an Egyptian Book of the Dead story, but he did. And curfew got moved. Am I reading this wrong?
Yeah. It's 6 to 6.
Wow.
What happened?
Oh, we had an emergency alert. That curfew had been moved to 6 p.m.
Oh Lord. Okay.
The unpleasant stuff must be happening in Los Angeles.
I hope my daughter went out looking for she's in LA, and she went out driving around to find a protest. Good Lord. At any rate,
Yeah.
let's hope she found it and left.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't think you want to find a protest. I think that's
Yeah.
there's some really a nasty, dangerous edge to this stuff right now.
Yeah, I know.
Not that there are, peaceful riots, but I mean, this seems there's something weird about it. But anyway,
Yeah.
It's so incredible. This is what we're doing. All sorts of trouble happening in the world. We're still in half lockdown, and I'm perfectly happy spending my afternoon talking about 1985.
Well, Flint, what's funny is that I just had a flash back in whenever it was 1991. I was doing something with G.I. Joe. Now that might have been the Geek series that I worked on, but it was when bombs were falling in, Kuwait or whatever. And somebody probably has a better grasp on recent history, but it was kind of like, this is really strange.
Oh, I remember when the exact place I was in the first it was this is 1991. We're really violating things here at the show.
Yeah, I know.
But I remember exactly where I was. I was sitting with George Loom and Les Mayfield in Disney animation, and we're surrounded by the Aladdin stuff, all the the promo stuff for Aladdin for the Aladdin. And this woman walked in, and we just bombed Baghdad. And the first flash I had in my mind was the Disney version of Baghdad, like we're bombing these weird colorful
right, off of throwing throwing
So
bombs off flying carpets, right?
30 seconds to realize, oh, First Gulf War just began. It's kind of interesting. But so that was no. I didn't remember the sunbathe. I mean, it's so much stuff. I mean, I just forgotten about. I mean, I forget a lot of the stuff that just happened. I mean, I remember what the office looked like. You go all the way up the stairs, top of the stairs. Ilby and Linda Giella down the hall, and you and I were on the right. I think Doug and Steve were on the left, and then post wave at the back.
That's right.
And then there was the kind of. I don't know what there was that one room that maybe the coffee was in it or something. Yeah, I can't remember where that was, and then there was the giant living room.
Giant living room with the pink couches. Pink couches.
Yeah.
Mauve. I remember Mauve because
Mauve. Okay.
I remember seeing Marv sitting on there. When Marv.
Oh, right, of course.
I remember thinking Marv on Mauve. Kind of
sort of like blonde on blonde, right?
What did Marv came in and did Transformers at the end after kind of after Sunbow.
It kind of seems like he was doing My Little Pony also. Was he doing that?
And Len, because I always thought of him and Marv and Len as partners. It's Marv Wolfman and Len Weiner who we're talking about. Were among the comic book refugees who really got. I think Steve gave them multi-script deals.
Right.
That paid for their move out. And all right, now you had to have been at the Marv Wolfman party in the Valley. Were you there, Buzz? I called Marv Wolfman's unfairly named porno house because
he had a house that was on part of the original Edgar Rice Burroughs Tarzana Ranch.
Right.
And if you went all the way back up the hill, the original Edgar Rice Burroughs gazebo was up on the top.
Was that the first Wolf Manor?
Well, not the first Wolf Manor. I mean, he had one before back east, but it was the one out here. Yeah.
This was his West Coast first Wolf Manor, but that was the house that looked like 60s swinger party. It just like stopped happening that night. Party. I remember that thing because that was the first time I met I saw all the comic book guys in one place. I already knew Frank at that point, but it was the first time I ever met Howard Chaykin. I knew Marv and Len, but I mean, there are all these guys I'd heard about for years, but I'd never actually seen them.
Yeah.
And I felt this strange alien from animation sitting here with all the guys.
Well, funny thing about Len, one of my good friends in New York City, who's a real estate attorney, went to junior high with Len. They were best friends at junior high, and they started a fanzine together, and they attended the first Comic-Con together. And also with Michael Uslan, he was there too. When they were all kids, basically.
The first Comic-Con when they were kids?
I think so. I think it was in the 60s.
Well, did you go to the Comic-Cons back then?
No.
Because the first time I went was with Buzz, and I think it may have been in Ruby Spears days.
Okay.
Yeah.
I went after. I think I went to a couple from Sunbow, but not before them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, I didn't go. I maybe went 1 year before Sunbow. I stay in that kind of Habsburg Monarchy hotel that was at the Westgate, because Comic-Con was right next door to the Westgate.
Okay.
Grant, but they didn't know US Grant till TSR days.
Yeah.
I mean, because that was a whole. I mean, talk about something that then it really was about comic books.
Right.
It was really kind of small and intimate, but if you're in the Westgate, because and this must have been 86 or so, but by then I knew Frank fairly well, so I'd be hanging out with him. And that, and there you really are. You go into the bar and there's Will Eisner, and there's all these kind of legendary characters.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a cool thing. That was really cool, and you could buy I bought pulps there. That was basically I spent the first 3 Comic-Cons rebuying my childhood. And most of it is sitting in the storage box behind me, and I have to open it up because I haven't seen it in 35 years. Most of it.
I hope it's not in the basement where the rats can get to it.
No. It's we see it place off. All right, I think we're pretty close to end of time.
Okay.
So there'll be an episode where we talk about all the sort of shows nobody talks about that we did at Sunbow, like robotics, like
Great.
Bigfoot and the Muscle
Oh
Machines.
my gosh.
We can do humanoids and visionaries, though in humanoids people still talk about it. And a lot of people, I was hearing from this guy that there's a bar in Scotland that runs visionary episodes,
Oh my God. That's wonderful.
do that. We'll reconvene and talk about all that stuff. But anyways, so this was it's kind of a fun one. This is only the second one of these like this, and I don't know whether it's just us endlessly rambling or it's kind of interesting stuff that you always get asked about, and and I've
Right.
never talked about a lot of.
Right.
It's kind of like a weird funeral. All right, talk to you guys.
Okay, guys. Great to see you all.
Take care.
Thanks, Mac.
All right. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in
Bye-bye.
today. If you enjoyed the
Okay.
show, be sure to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. If you have an idea for what you'd like to see on a future show, leave us a comment and we'll take a look. Stay tuned for more information on next week's stream. And again,